Welcome back to the Challenge Insiders. We're doing the Challenge All Stars episode 4, and we're recapping it with you guys here today. Chantel, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Happy to be here. Honestly, it's been my favorite show to recap, at least in 2021. It's always so nostalgic, and I just have a smile on my face watching it. I'm in great spirits.
That's awesome. Well, I do think I'm going to have a couple of hot takes here because there's like one or two things in this episode that I didn't like so much, but overall, the episode as a whole is still something I enjoy, and I enjoy recapping this every single week. So I'm sure we'll get into it as we go through the episode. Now, starting off with this episode, the music again throughout this whole episode was on point. Now, I do think that we had DMX playing there in the beginning. I haven't heard DMX in such a long time, and I'm like, I've got to go back and listen to more of his tracks.
Well, yeah, it was, I think, okay, so 2 weeks or so ago, I believe it was, they did play a DMX song, and then, unfortunately, rest in peace, he passed away the week after. And so I think that they recognized that they did play a DMX song, and it was a big part of the late 90s, early 2000s. Like, he was definitely in this nostalgia era of the challenge. And so I think they wanted to pay a little bit of a homage to him and have another one of his songs in the episode.
Yeah, 100%. I used to love listening to DMX. It's just one of those artists that for some other reason I forgot about. Like we spoke about this last week, like there's who can remember what songs came out last year for certain artists, some of them just pump them out one after the other. Now we start off with this episode with Nehemiah obviously being on a high because he's just won his arena elimination round. And he gives us a little bit of an insight in regards to why he's playing the challenge this time around. And he is trying to win the money so he can give back to invest in underprivileged areas and help kids and people learn about financial freedom. And this is something that's quite close to my heart. Yumi just spoke about my own aspirations for the next 5 years and what I want to do in business. I get immense motivation from people that are wanting to teach other people to be financially free, because I feel like a lot of us, and I'm including myself in that whole boat at the moment, is in the rat race where we have to go and do a 9 to 5. So love this story. And I think that, again, I was completely wrong about the Leroy one where I thought Leroy's getting this winner's edit over the last season and he didn't get it. I do feel like Nehemiah is someone, again, like he gets a good edit here. He's someone we can get behind. And I'm still loving my pick with having Nehemiah in my team.
Yeah, no, Nehemiah is a great pick. I like, I think I said this last week, the fact that he's kind of teaming up with Jemmye, who's a lot more strategic, and that's the way that she's always played. And now, she's done a lot of working out, that she might be able to also back up her strategy by being physically competitive. And so, her teaming up with Nehemiah, having their little flirtmance or showmance or whatever is developing here. She does mention that he's been flirting with her a little bit, as if it's all him. But I think that it's going to be good for him moving forward, because having someone to bounce these ideas off of is going to be, I think, better for him to get further along in the game. So I think it's a good partnership, we'll say, to help Nehemiah, who does have a lot of strength and he's good physically at these challenges. Now he's going to have a little more of the strategy going with them, and then maybe even having some numbers going with them. So he might do a lot better than he's done in the past. You gotta love Katie. Katie's the best. Katie's the best. I was just watching
Katie as well.
Of the Gauntlet 3 just before this, and have you seen the Gauntlet 3?
I don't remember if I have, but I mean, what I'm loving about this season is all the flashbacks to previous seasons where they're showing us the history of them. And obviously with Katie going into this challenge as well, they again show us all of the things that she's done in the past, the challenges that she preferred not to do. You may call it a quit or not a quit, I don't know. But I mean, you kind of see that. You see her feisty personality, fighting with people, her saying that she would much rather go into an elimination than do a challenge because she feels like that's where her strength is. Hats off to her. There's not many people that would every single round go into an elimination rather than do some of the challenges in certain cases. But she seems to be quite fearless.
She is really fearless. And that's kind of what happened in the Gauntlet 3, is that her team didn't want her to run the final with, and so she started working with the other team. Like they're just like broken down in the middle, like with rookies and vets. And so she was working with the rookies and being like, "Help me stay," because they want her to stay because they perceived her to be weak. And so obviously they want her to stay and run the final. And so she was working with the other side, in order to stay. And her team was trying to throw her into eliminations and throw challenges so she'd have to go in. And she still was like, "F you, I'm not letting you take me down." And so she's always going to go down swinging. She doesn't like being people telling her what to do. She's going to make her own choices. And sometimes we might not agree with them. Fine. But I like that she's always going 100% with her decisions. She's not really that wishy-washy. She's just like, hey, take it or leave it. Love me or hate me.
Hey, well, that's the thing. You've always backed her from day one. She was your number one girl pick when you had an opportunity to pick first when we did our draft. So your draft's looking pretty good at this point as well. We'll have a look at that later on in the episode. I do want to move on to here with the Arisa scene that we get early on in the episode, where Arisa says that, these days she's on a different wavelength than what she was back in the day. And obviously that's going to get confirmed by Alton later on as well, who's known her in the past, that said this is a very different girl or woman from the one that he knew when they did all these shows together a lot earlier on in their challenge careers or real world careers. And looking at it, it's quite interesting because she loves cannabis. She's doing whatever she was doing with the smoke and the cannabis out there. And she's like, I also love food. So I combine the two together now. And she just seems to be a very interesting character because in this episode, we see her both being very zen, but still having a very feisty side to her as well. So I just find her quite fascinating as a person.
Well, I liked Arisa on her original season of Road Rules. She was interesting. She popped off. She had attitude. She wasn't gonna let anybody tell her what to do. She's beautiful. All the above. She was a really great casting pick. But I can't remember how many challenges that she's did. But she was never someone that was physically that great. She was scared of quite a few things, and I wasn't really sure why she was asked back, to be honest, because to me, she wasn't someone that was, as a challenger, was that impressive, we'll say. But I guess her personality was what was kind of bringing her into the All-Star season. With her and the cannabis, she was using, what it was is it's Palo Santo, which is a way to smudge, which is removing negative energy. And I think she was doing it with her crystals. I'm not sure. And so I appreciate that she's kind of moved into kind of a Zen thing. I do a lot of spiritual things myself, so I totally get it. But I just don't think that what she was bringing actually matched with being on the challenge. I just don't think that it was in alignment with how the game is, how the game is evolved. If you want to win and get to the end, you're not just going to be able to cruise there. I don't think that anything was snaky this episode or she was done really wrong in this episode. I actually thought it was fair in the end how it went down. And so I just think that she wasn't meant to come back to the challenge right now. I don't think that it was the right decision for her to have made.
Yeah, and it does make you wonder, how much homework did the producers or the people who put the cast together really do in regards to getting these people to come back? Because for me personally, this is going to be one of the two things about this episode that annoyed me, and it's not anything on the cast. It's not anything on the All-Stars idea of having these OGs come back. It's just something that would have annoyed me in the regular season, and it's something that would annoy me in this season, and it's when people quit. I really, really hate that. I just feel like you should go out there. You should at least attempt it, like Beth said, even if you're going to lose, at least attempt it. And she kind of came across not that great because, when she was called down saying, hey, can I box Beth? And TJ's like, no, you're not going to be able to just box someone here. This is going to be an actual challenge. And then when she didn't get away, she's saying, listen, I'm going to bounce. I'm out. I just really didn't like that approach from her. And sorry for any Arisa fans if they listen to this. I'm sure she's a great person outside of it. I just don't like that within the context of the game. I feel like she took the spot there for someone else that we could have seen come back on this season. And I'm sure, Chantel, there's heaps of other OG legends that we would have loved to have seen come back instead.
100%. And so, I mean, she was all of our last picks.
Yeah.
And I think that we probably all could feel that she wasn't necessarily going to be competing at a level that we were that we felt was going to get to the end and win. We just didn't feel it. And she proved us all pretty much correct that like, she wasn't going to be able to hack it. It's not just about being able to do these challenges. It's about to be able to have the mental strength to be able to endure the house and endure like the paranoia and endure all these things are elements of any of these competitive reality game shows. And so I thought that like, you know, she could just, if she's so mad at Beth, like, and end at the house for all this, like go down and like knock down the walls of the blocks and like just do that challenge and beast out that challenge. And even if she wanted to quit after that, I could respect it then. You know what I mean? Maybe. Like I could maybe be like, okay, do you know what? Her values are that she didn't want to go back and live in the house with these snakes. So, but she's still like, but I'm still a badass competitor. I'm going to win. And I'm going to say, I'm not coming back to play with you guys anymore. And then I'd be like, okay, that's pretty badass. It's pretty ballsy. At least she came and she competed. But the fact that she was like, nah, I'm not going to do this. I was like, nah, you're done with me. You're done.
100%. And I mean, like the challenge itself, there was the walls that they needed to pull out. They needed to punch their way through the walls. So if you wanted to do boxing, this is as close as you're going to get. Just pretend like there's a big old size Beth face right on one of these like platforms that you need to punch through, or Mark's face if you were annoyed by Mark, because I also feel like she probably in that moment thought that Mark was one of the few people that went to her before the nomination or before the arena to say, listen, I'm not going to use it against you. I don't want you to go down. So she probably felt snaked by him to some degree. But this, at the end of the day, Mark was going off past knowledge of how the safety nomination has worked in the past, which has been whoever uses it could normally take the lifesaver and put someone else in. And this is one of the things I'll get in later on. I can say a little bit more about that, but I feel like it's going to be better when we get into the nomination phase and get back to this a little bit later on. Now, we also get in a little opportunity here where Katie and Derek are seen talking here in the beginning. And Katie tells Derek that, you know, I've actually prepared for this one. I've come in and I've trained for it, which I think is something that she hasn't done in the past. Well, that's at least how it's coming across for me as a new viewer seeing it. Two things here. Firstly, continuing to be really impressed by Derek's social game throughout this whole season. People are trusting him. People are telling him things. He's getting a lot of edit confessionals and things like that. He seemed to be right on his read so far. So that relationship there looks like it's something that's close. I think Derek probably could be quite trustworthy. He comes across as being quite trustworthy at this point with that information. And he's saying that, you know, Katie might not be the layup that everybody thinks she's going to be this season. And I kind of want to believe it. I think that if she's got heart and she is kind of fit and she's trained for this a little bit, we could see a very dangerous competitor in Katie, and she might be underestimated.
Well, I totally trust, though, Derek's opinion as well. Derek was considered to be kind of a layup and when he was a newbie or whatnot. And then, like, he showed them, don't mess with me because I may be smaller than you, but I'll F you up. And so I think that he sees that fight in Katie as well. Katie's small, but she doesn't quit in those kind of circumstances. And, you know, she'll claw her way out. Like she's going to go fighting. Like she's not going to just be like, lay down and die. And so I think that it's a similar quality that Derek has. And they've also been doing this for so many years together. So he's seen how people perceive her, and it's actually just not correct. She's not as bad as people seem to perceive her. And especially if she knows how people perceive her. They perceived her that way for many, many, many years. And she's had to endure this house for many years with them thinking that she's a layup. And so the fact that she knows that, and she went and she did her homework, and her homework in this case is getting her body into shape so that they underestimate you, but you can take them down. I think it's probably the reason why she came back to the challenge, is to be like, F you guys, I'm not a layup.
Great. And we're here to see it. So we go into the actual challenge, and the challenge is these this giant rig with two platforms on it, and there's a rope in between, or a bunch of ropes, and you've got competitors having to sort of go over these ropes to the other side and then go back and then pull ropes to sort of eliminate people from the challenge. And the first one to pull all of the ropes, the first team to do that team will win. And we also find out here that it's going to be 4 teams of I believe 5 and one team of, well, 3 teams of 5 and 1 team of 4. Darrell is going to have to go twice. That's randomly selected by TJ. And looking at these teams on paper, the black team has got Kendall, Laterian, Kellyanne, Darrell, and Gisela. Pretty stacked team all around. Like, I didn't think Gisela and that specific team would potentially do too well. She just doesn't have the body type for that type of challenge. If like a rope gets pulled, to keep herself up is quite difficult. And then the team ultimately that is going to do really, really well as well on this one would be Mark's team, which is Ruthie, Derek, Anissa, and Mark. And that seems to be the real strong team. Like, Anissa was the only one there, again, that probably didn't have the right body build to do really well in this type of challenge, but she has showed a lot of heart, and like halfway into it, she was saying her dancing skills came in very handy and she tried to hang in there. But I do think that ultimately they make the right decision by telling her just drop so we can get through this challenge quicker, because it's all about speed, right? And they end up winning it because of that.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you know what kind of dancing it was, but it was pole dancing. She was paid through college by being a professional dancer, we'll say, in the club scene. And so she should have some good upper body strength, because I know some people that work and are professional pole dancers, like different style, but like they have really good upper body strength. So the fact that she was able to use that in her core just to hang on a little bit, and she was doing pretty well. But yeah, I agree, they made the right decision. Drop. Let's just zoom these people back and forth, because if we have the ropes and we're faster, we can keep on cutting these ropes and get more people across in a faster time. And so yeah, they made the right decision. And I think the fact that they were the second grouping of people to go, they were able to see how the other winning team, what they did, what was, what worked, what didn't work. And that's how I think that they were able to win.
Yeah. And again, a couple of people here that really impressed me. Obviously, you get probably the biggest matchup for the whole day would have been Derek going against Nehemiah. Nehemiah being my second choice pick and Derek being my first choice pick, and my first choice pick beating my second choice pick in this case. But it was a close battle there. But again, it just shows you how good Derek is in these types of games. He is a real physical threat, because even Laterian on the side said, I didn't expect Nehemiah to lose this one, because Nehemiah has been pretty dominant in most of these physical challenges up until this point.
I don't even think that Nehemiah thought he was going to lose this one, because I think he was a little bit like, I'm at the L, and then actually got the rope pulled out from underneath him. So I think that he didn't expect to be losing that one as well. But Derek, he's fast, and he usually has good strategy, and that's where he always wins. That's why he can win these pole wrestlings against these guys that are bigger than him, because he knows how to work strategically with his size, his build, and obviously his intensity and heart. So I love that moment, because I don't think that Nehemiah saw it coming at all.
Now, the second person here who did not see it coming at all was Janae. I firstly want to shout it out for her, because, listen, I've seen her previous challenges, and normally she wasn't really the greatest physical beast in these challenges when she played. And a lot of what I remember with Janae was just that relationship between her and Zach, which was just so toxic. So I'm really happy that she's here in a season without him. And then, when that rope gets pulled on her, she ends up still surviving and staying on it, showing a lot of heart to get through to the other side. But Kellyanne basically laps her on this one and pulls the rope on her just before, she could see Elton. She was starting to reach out to Elton, and the perfect music was playing throughout all of this. It's like she's going to make it, and then suddenly you just hear the music go whoop as she falls. I just thought it was brilliantly edited.
The song was "Hold On" by Wilson Phillips. Hold on for one more day. Dun, dun. It's so like that era as well. It's so old school, and totally have our Wilson Phillips going on while she's not holding on, and Kellyanne just laps her and takes her down. Definitely. One thing, though, that I thought was interesting that Kellyanne recognizes is that her and Kendall have been on teams a couple times and have been on the winning teams a couple times. And so she's now worried that people are going to be lumping them together as, physical specimens that need to get out. So I'm glad that Kellyanne is thinking about this, because people probably are talking already.
Now, speaking the truth here says that he doesn't know how this actually sort of played out on the show, but Mark Long revealed that the order of the winners were actually flipped. So the winners went first in this instance. So that's quite interesting because myself and Chantal, we were thinking up until this point that the winners probably saw how the first winning team performed and then they got their strategy from there, which is quite interesting. And I would have loved to have known how close it was between those two teams because both of those teams seem to be pretty dominant. Like we said, that first team that went on this, at least on our screens when we saw it, having Derek and that team there with some really good performing people like not Derek, I guess Darrell, Gillian, Letarian, Kendall. There were some good players in there. Like Kendall impressed me on that specific performance as well. Like again, I think Kendall is someone that Chantal has on her draft pick. Kendall is going to, I think, be on a lot of eliminations going to the end here. Another thing I was thinking about just about this, Chantal, is we still have 18 players left in the game and we've got like 5 episodes left. How's this going to work? Is there going to be like a purge or something?
I would imagine there'll be a purge. That's pretty typical challenge where there's like a big a challenge where two men, 2 women go home, or maybe even more. Like the bottom 3 teams that don't qualify, they're gone. So I'm sure that there's going to be a big purge happening, and there could also be more people running the final. When I was watching the Gauntlet 3, they had like 10 people running the final, or maybe even more than that. There was just a lot of people running the final. So maybe they will increase the amount of people running the final, and then have stages where people will be cut off and released from the final. That could be something too. Maybe.
Now, the big thing that sort of stands out here is that Katie ends up freaking out in the middle of the challenge. And we know she doesn't like heights. She's hurt herself a couple of times doing these heights type of challenges. And I'm sure that would be in your mind if you've busted up your face a few times. And she is also really short. So she just can't get to those top 2 ropes that are still left on the course. And she ends up just jumping into the water. Elton says, just jump into the water. Massive props to Elton for trying to get to the other side with 1 rope and, showing his physical ability. And definitely Gisela noticed this throughout the whole thing. And she said it's really hot when a guy can step up for his whole tribe, thinking Survivor, his whole team throughout the whole challenge. So that was pretty cool. And we obviously know that in the next on the challenge sort of bit at the end there, we see that there's a bit of romance in the air that's starting to blossom there between Gisela and Elton.
Yes, they're definitely vibing with each other. I have heard through the Reddit, waves that they are still dating right now, apparently. So this does develop into something, we'll say, real, and that it's continued outside of the challenge. So this is the beginning of something. So it's cool. I like it. I like them together.
Now, Mark Long and Ruthie's team are the 2 that wins this challenge, right? So Darrell calls Ruthie a truther, and he says that, she's someone that you can rely on. She's got heart, someone you want in your team in these challenges. And I've been worried about Ruthie based on the previous episode showing that she's out with the girls like Anissa and that. And I think that if she didn't win this challenge, I do feel like Ruthie is going to see an elimination or 2 in this specific season, because I don't think that she is as in with that group as we would love for her to be. But it is good to see Darrell talk really well about her abilities and everything like that. So I do think that she could be another person that could be a little bit undercover, because she comes across as not that assuming. She's not a big physical person, but we also learned a bit about her background here, saying that she grew up in foster care. Her foster mom or dad, I can't remember if it was the mom or the dad, I think it was the mother, said that
in the foster, no, I don't think it was a foster home. I think it was in the adoption home, I think. Anyways, I could be misunderstood. Okay. A grandmother of some sort, but yes.
Yeah, so she's never had someone believe in her. So that's what kind of drives her to want to prove people wrong on these challenges and want to prove people wrong in life. And I've got to say, again, just giving me a little bit more of a backstory of Ruthie, who's someone I didn't know personally coming into the season. It does make me want to shout for her a little bit more in these challenges. And I'm really starting to feel like I've got her back. I shouldn't, because she's not on my team, but I want the people like her that come on here and have got a great backstory for why they're doing it. I want them to do well, and I'm always a sucker for the underdog.
Absolutely. And I think you were kind of wondering why both myself and Mike, we wanted to have Ruthie on our team. And it's because if someone like Darrell, who's done many of more seasons than Ruthie has, and he knows how people play and who he would want to have as a partner and stuff like that. So if he's recognizing that she has the grit and the foresight to see through these challenges and like be a really fierce competitor, I believe that. And I think that that's what we used to see all the time from her, was that she always had heart, and sometimes she just like was going up against somebody that was a little bit bigger than her, but she still like really fought to the end. And so I think that they're going to protect her a little bit because they like her heart. And obviously we as an audience are liking her even more now that we're getting to know a little bit more about her story. Like, we did know about this back in the past, but being reminded of like where she came from and how much she's still growing is, yeah, it's pretty awesome to kind of give her the underdog edit and have us rooting for her.
I think the really important thing here for the All-Star seasons probably, and they would have thought about this going into the season, is they're bringing people back that have not played the game for 16 or 18 years, some of these people. And they've got this whole group of new fans that have started watching the challenge. That includes someone like myself, that potentially haven't seen some of these old seasons. But I think that they've done a really good thing in trying to get people up to speed with what these people have done in the past, who they are. They do these montages, like I feel like, yes, there's certain little intricacies that I still miss. That's why I've got the lovely Chantel here on the podcast to let me in on those things. But, I feel like as a new person, I don't feel as in the dark as I would have felt in a normal season if they didn't go back and show these past relationships. Like, I remember when I watched my first season, I think it was Final Reckoning, there was a lot of dynamics I just didn't understand. I didn't understand the whole Kyle, Cara Maria, Paulie dynamic that happened there. I just there was a bunch of stuff.
Do you know now?
I feel like I've got a better idea, and that's probably a different story for a different podcast. But I do feel like I'm across it a lot better. And the same with some of the, I just didn't understand why CT was that great, or because he was, I think, with Veronica or something that specific season, and he was struggling with her and stuff like that. But I feel like they've done a really good job in this All-Star season to really explain the backstory for us newer people who are watching the show to actually understand exactly who these players are as well. Now, Mark goes here and he wins the Lifesaver as the winning captain, and he lets us know that he will be using it, and some people will be sweating here. He wants to shake it up and find out what the Lifesaver is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. These are people that want to play. I mean, and also Mark this is his baby, like he got this show to happen. And so if there's an element that is introduced to the game, producers want that element to be used. Like they don't want people to not use these things because they want to see what drama it's going to create. And so with people being too afraid to like upset the house and afraid to do this, afraid to do that, yeah, it might be better gameplay, but the producers don't probably care for it. So I think that he wanted to make sure that it's going to be an exciting episode, and he just kind of wanted to take that into his hands and be like, yeah, we're going to see what the Lifesaver does because this is my show and I want it to do well and it's part of the game. So let's see what happens with it.
Yeah, because it was going to be one of the things I was going to ask you. Like Mark in the past seasons, we haven't seen much background on what type of player he was. I only saw him play in his last season, the one that he went into an elimination against Johnny Bananas. He kind of threw himself in there, and it was the first time he went into one. And in that season specifically, he didn't come across as this big player that would make the big moves. He kind of looked like someone that would normally play the game a bit more safe. So my question to you is, do you reckon, and I think you might have answered it already, do you reckon it's because he's got a lot more invested interest in this season that he is playing a bit more for high-risk game, or would that normally have been how he would have played in his early days as well?
I think that his intentions is to make sure that it's a success. So obviously he wants to win, but I don't think that is his number one objective. I think he wants it to be a good season that they will want to bring it back again. I don't know if he has any stakes in the producing side of things. I don't know how much, maybe money he's making for it being a success. I don't know any of those details. And if anybody does, please let me know because I would love to know about that contract. But I'm sure he wants it to be picked up for another season. And so making good TV is part of it. And maybe he's getting paid, like maybe he's getting paid $100,000 for his show up and his fee for just to be there. And so maybe he doesn't even care that much about his standing in the game, but he wants to make sure it's successful. That's kind of where I'm feeling about it, because I don't think that he would have done that in the past. I don't remember if they had that many like game-changing advantages. I can't fully remember, but I feel as though he was more of a safe player. He's kind of was like the fun guy, and like people liked hanging around with him. He was good physically. He was a decent competitor, but he wasn't necessarily the strategic masterminds that was like always like trying to like plot for the end. Like he wasn't. I don't picture him to be that guy.
So we are getting it here, and I think that this is something I've seen before, that Mark is an executive producer now, so definitely wants to make a good show. And the other thing that I was going to say is that I work in the recruitment tech industry, and a lot of our clients are recruiters. And what I do know is that Mark Long was the main recruiter for this specific season. So you'd hope that he gets a bit of a finder's fee or a bit of commission paid on each one of these people that he's bringing back into the show, because he's done a lot of the behind-the-scenes work to put the show together. So it's brilliant to watch at the moment. I'm loving the fact, because Mark is showing us also here at the party that he has got the skills to play this type of game, because I found it quite interesting, him sort of sitting there on his throne at the end, the Godfather, getting all the girls to come over one by one, having a conversation with them and asking them, do you want me to use the lifesaver or not? And here is why I think I should use the lifesaver, making them feel like they're a part of the decision, a part of the plan. You can see he's got a very strong political game, which is probably the reason he never really saw an elimination until the last season, when he decided that he wanted to go in there. So this is all good stuff. And I just wanted to put this one thing in there. Jemme, who I've never really I came into she was my number 2 girl pick, and I was like, I don't know, like I feel conflicted. Should I pick Jemme in the spot? Because I never really felt like she was that great of a challenger before, and she wasn't really there to win the show. But her confessionals and how she's playing this game at the moment is phenomenal to me. I think she's the best strategic player at this point, and specifically when it comes down to the confessionals. And she says that, there's nobody that's more power hungry than a 50-year-old man who calls himself the Godfather.
Absolutely. But this is another thing. This is about making good TV. It's moments like this that become kind of epic or kind of copied in the challenge. Like, that they have like the tribunals where like you have to go and pitch your cases in the newer seasons. But I think that all kind of came organically in the past, when people had power, and then people were coming and trying to bargain with them and be like, oh, you throw me in, I won't throw you in. Like that happened when it was like the Kennys and the Evans of like that era. People were always talking to the people in power. And so I think that he wanted to bring that element back in. It's a good scene. Like even in the regular season of the challenge, when Big T was a double agent, and she had people coming in to see the Queen at her throne. Like it's kind of, it creates a scene. It creates a moment. It allows you to see where these players' heads are at. It gives more opportunity for confessional. I think it's all part of his master plan of having a good season. And I think he wanted to bring that to the show. So I loved it. And I think that Jemme clocked it as well. But I think it's also for the executive producer role, being like, I'm making sure that this is going to be a good season. And if not, this episode's going to be good.
Yeah, and I mean, it comes down to execution. If you look at Kendall trying to do something similar in the previous episode, she was crucified for it because her execution wasn't that good. She was not really telling or giving the guys any information in regards to why it may be a good idea to use it, or saying, hey, you're not my target. She kind of just wanted to make them sweat instead of actually using it as a great strategical tool within the game. So I think that, Mark's got the balance right here. And obviously, Mark having probably the biggest sort of in with everybody, having gotten everybody into the show, like he probably is situated a lot more in a better position compared to like a Kendall, who's only, I believe, played the game once up until this point and don't have that same social connections with everybody in the game. Now, the one thing also in the party scene that sort of stood out for me, I made a bit of a joke last time when I said, Arisa sitting on the edge, sleeping. That's kind of like, I can kind of relate with her, because I might be like a bit tired as well when it comes to some of these parties if it gets pretty late night at the moment, and I don't go out as often now due to the pandemic. But this week, I can tell you, there's no way I would have done that for 2 nights in a row. Like, I mean, I would have been in there and at least socializing. So she's really seen here as someone that is isolating herself and really just not fitting in with the rest of the crowd, which to me is a bit of a shame to see, but clearly her heart's not in this. So it's kind of early warning signs here that we probably will see her leave the game pretty easily.
Well, and so just like in comparison to with what Mark was doing with having those conversations with people, that's a way to insulate yourself from the game. He made a lot of promises to people, and there was only one person that he was really going to be going against that promise, is the person that ends up going in. He thought it was going to be Kendall, but it ended up not going the way that he expected. And so only one person was going to really be mad at him, and everybody else is like, oh, well, he's pretty much a person of his word. He said that he wasn't going to put me in if that was the case. So he was building some trust with people when he had some power. And what Arisa is not doing is building any bonds, relationships, any trust with people that maybe when they're in power, they're going to want to keep her. And they also probably don't really value her because it doesn't seem like she's ever going to have any power. And so I think that she's definitely doing herself a huge disservice by keeping herself on the periphery, because these games, it ends up always being a numbers game. It ends up always being about who are your friends, and are your friends in power, and are they going to protect you? And she's not really putting in the work there. She's taking a nap.
So Chris D says that Arisa also had some health issues while she was out there, which is why she isolated herself. She had severe gluten allergies and breaking out of rashes, and had limited food she could eat. So obviously she's got a very specific diet as well. I do think that, as someone that is pretty strict on my own diet and what I eat, and this is a thing, funny enough, this brings up a completely different conversation, and sorry for everybody that's listening if it's going a little bit left field here. Bloody Fessy not eating the thing at the end of the previous challenge season, but I think a lot of people forget that Fessy he can't eat anything that's not halal, and I don't know if that was made clear in the show.
Is it halal or just pork? Because before on Big Brother, he just wouldn't eat the pork sandwiches, so they gave him fake meat.
I believe it's halal because he's Muslim. He's Muslim, so I do believe it's halal, but I don't know if it's been explained clearly on the show. So, but again, I don't want to
So he ate some of it, and he didn't make any confessionals about that, and it's never been part of the narrative. And even in the after shows and stuff like that, he hasn't spoken about the fact that his religious beliefs came into question there. He's never brought that up. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm just like, I don't know. I think that because he's somebody that doesn't want to ever take any responsibility for himself, I think that he would have grasped onto the fact that it wasn't blessed before he was before he would let people think he was chickening out or he was throwing the challenge and quitting. So I think that if that was really the case, he would have used it. That's just my thing.
Well, and I guess coming back to Arisa here, I do feel for her if she had some health issues and things like that going on as well. You obviously never know in these situations. It was never, again, this didn't make the show either. So I'm sure, Chris, maybe that was in the after show. I haven't watched the after show yet, or I haven't had any look into what Arisa said as to why she struggled so much. I would have loved to have seen her at least try to compete in the challenge. I mean, she came out there and committed to the show. So I would have at least wanted to see her lose a challenge rather than completely quit it. So not fully on board with the Arisa one, but I do feel for her if she didn't have any food or anything there to sort of get her through the game.
Well, this is the thing with Arisa, and of course I can have compassion for anybody that has any difficult eating, health issues. I totally can understand that, but she knew what she was kind of getting herself into, and I would have hoped that she would have made it be part of her contract that she's like, hey, I have a very strict diet. I really am going to need to have certain things in order for me to feed my body and be at a physically well enough to be able to be on this show. I just don't understand why that wasn't part of this discussion when she said yes to coming onto the show. So, and why she would say yes if she knew that it was a possibility that her health could be compromised. I know, speaking the truth, he hangs out with me on Reality Realness, so he's not a fan of Fessy, just like most of us are. We call him Fussy over at Reality Realness.
So just to clarify, speaking the truth, I'm definitely not a fan of him. I just try and stay as neutral as possible and look at different things. But there's a lot of things about Fessy that has annoyed me this season, and definitely the biggest one is him throwing Casey completely under the bus there at the end as well. And great confessional by Corey saying, just cue it right here. He's going to have some sort of a story as to why he lost it. And I think you're right, Chantal. He probably would have had a story if the halal thing was a big issue for him as well. Now, moving on to the pre-nominations phase for this episode, we finally see Cyrus, Nehemiah, Jimmy, and Beth all sitting together and strategizing because, like I've said in the previous episodes, I've been really concerned about Beth sort of thinking that she's very close with Nehemiah and potentially they're not that close. But this is the first time that we don't see Cyrus and Beth speaking to each other in isolation to Nehemiah and Jimmy. So great little scene here of them all sitting together. They ask Beth who she would like to see down in the arena. And she says that she would like to see Kendall or Katie in the arena. And Jimmy says, quite rightfully so, you're crazy, girl. Why do you want to see Kendall firstly? Because she will destroy you in anything. And then Katie isn't a good choice for yourself either because Katie potentially will get saved by Mark.
Well, I think that that Beth was hoping that it would be something physical where they could, like a hall brawl type thing or pole wrestling. Beth has won a lot of those type of challenges where she has to have like one-to-one contact kind of, that kind of battle. And so I think that that's what she's hoping because Kendall is small, like she's petite. Katie is small, petite, and Beth is a bit bigger. So I think that that's what she was hoping for when she's suggesting these people. I don't think she was thinking of maybe something climbing or doing like, the ropes thing that Kendall won. Like I don't think she was expecting anything like that. And then thinking about what the actual elimination would have been, I really wish we got to see it because I want to see how Beth was going to compete. Like that's what I wanted to see happen there. Like, why did Arisa steal that moment for us? I wanted to see how this challenge was going to play out. It's kind of like, womp womp. It's kind of sad.
100%. And I mean, firstly, when you look at Kendall, to me, there's just too many potential things that she could beat Beth in. Like Jimmy said, if you wanted to go for a sure thing, you go against Arisa. Jimmy said that from the start because Arisa is also quite petite, but she doesn't look like she's physically all that fit. Beth hasn't competed in one of these shows in a very long time, and she's the oldest person out there. She's in her 50s. So she's not going to be the person that she was like 15, 16 years ago when she was competing in these things. So I do think that in this case, Jimmy is probably reading it right, and Beth maybe overestimates her ability to take Kendall or Katie on in this case. Maybe, I don't know, Katie would probably be pretty feisty even when it came to a physical thing. I just don't know if the weight difference or the body, sort of the way that their bodies are structured would make a difference going into like a physical type of challenge. But for some other reason, and I could be wrong here, I don't know if we're going to see a whole brawl. I don't think we're going to see it in this season. What do you think if you had to put money on it?
This is how it used to be back in the day that like hall brawl was a treat. We're like, oh my God, they're going to be doing hall brawl. Like it didn't happen every season. It didn't happen like 3 times in a season, much less. And so I could see there being a hall brawl for that reason, that it was usually used for the epic showdown. It would be like, Mark against Darrell or something. Like if it's going to be it'll be something like that. So I think that we could see it maybe once. And I wouldn't be surprised just because it originated so long ago that I think it's popular and people would be like, oh my God, a hall brawl with these players. That's so awesome. So I think
I'll tell you what I do want to see if we're putting things out there that we want to see in the elimination. I want to see, and again, this is not good for my draft picks because, I don't want the guys to go up against each other, but I do want to see Derek and Nehemiah go up against each other in a pole wrestle. I think that would be a pretty epic battle between those two. Derek probably has the upper hand in that case, probably will win, but I do think that it would be a pretty cool challenge to see down in the arena for those two guys to go up against each other.
I just don't know if they'll do it again. Because I feel like they're trying to be pretty fresh about like all the eliminations. I don't think that they're going to have repeats. So maybe they'll do something different, like the one where you have to like, get your ball in the center into the barrel or something like that. If it's something on like contact wise, it might be a variation, but I just don't think that they'll do pole wrestling again. They just did it. So I think that they're things.
You mean the challenge that Rogan knocked Jay out? That specific challenge where he gave him a concussion.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you had Mark go up against someone in that, I feel sorry for them because Mark is built like an absolute tank. So whoever goes up against them, rest in peace. Like you probably only have someone like a Darrell or something, probably an Elton, maybe a Laterian would be a pretty good matchup. Laterian's got a good amount of body weight behind him, and Laterian's been pretty good so far. He's been he's been below the radar since he's gone into the arena in the first episode, but you do still see quite a few confessionals from him here throughout the episode. So I do feel like we could still see more from Laterian moving forward. Now, the day before the elimination, we mentioned this before, we've got Mark going over to Arisa, talking to Arisa and saying, listen, I'm thinking of using the lifesaver. I didn't want to mess with your vibe last night, but, just know you're safe. I'm not going to use it against you. I'm not going to ask you to go in if I do use it. So you don't have to worry about that. Mark also says that, he's got that relationship with Katie, which means that he'll most likely look at using the lifesaver to get Katie out of there. Has the relationship in Katie and Mark, has that been something that was big on the show going back a couple of years or so? Or is that something that's new to a lot of people watching it now?
I mean, it's really hard for me to really remember because I was living this experience. But I think it's the nostalgia of being in the whirlwind of the challenge in your early 20s or mid 20s. And so I think that they're probably on a few seasons together. I can't remember offhand what they were on. But I just think that they've known each other for so long. You know what I mean? And like Mark is probably convinced Katie to come on the show. I wouldn't be surprised if Mark put in some work with some of these certain people. Like Katie was like, I'm never coming back. Evelyn's never coming back. There's so many people that are saying that they're never coming back, and that he was able to convince Katie to come back. So maybe there's some sort of agreement with them. And that's one reason why I think that Katie might have actually decided to throw herself in there, because I think she knew deep down that Mark was going to be using this lifesaver and was going to save her. So let's do the hero play here and throw myself down there with the full knowledge that Mark is using it and saving me. I would like to see Mark versus Laterian and Balls in, absolutely speaking the truth. That'd be a good matchup.
Speaking the truth, who do you think wins that one if Mark and Laterian goes up against each other? I'd be interested to know that from your end. I think Mark is a pretty big beast, so I feel like Mark will probably have the upper hand. Now, you kind of touched on this here with the elimination section of the show, the nomination section of the show, where they go and no one votes again for the second week in a row. Katie is saying, hey, I'm happy to go in. And this is the second thing. There's two things that annoyed me this episode. This is the second thing that really annoys me. Like, I understand it from Katie's perspective. I'm not annoyed at her per se, but I do really hate it when I don't get to see strategy, when I don't get to see people's votes and see where the allegiances are. And it's funny because I could see that the people who were annoyed by this were last week it was Jemme. This week you've got Janae. There's the newer school players don't like this kumbaya. We're just going to volunteer ourselves in. They want to see the strategic backstabbing allegiance type of gameplay, which it's kind of being prevented here. But with the lifesaver being used in the actual nomination, it actually saves the episode for me, because a lot of people freak out at that point because they're like, oh, now you do have to vote someone into it. So you can't just cop out and get someone to nominate themselves to go into the actual elimination. And Anissa has the confessional where she says, oh, come on, TJ, why do we have to vote again? And I'm like, Anissa, what are you talking about? You didn't vote in the first place.
Well, I think with Katie, I just watched it. The Gauntlet 3 is another one where she threw herself into elimination. So I think that she doesn't like when people decide to gang up on her and throw her in. Like, she did, just like that bothers her, where people are just getting her out of the game. And so I think that she likes to take it into her own hands and be like, I'm not scared. I'm not going to let you say my name. I'm throwing myself in. F you. So this is Katie's version of the F you. And I do think that she knew that Mark was going to be using it on her. And I agree with you. I was super happy though. I'm like, I love the fact that they still have to vote, and it's in public, it's out loud, and it's without getting to strategize. It was great.
Now, speaking the truth says that he's got LT against Mark, so he's disagreeing with us. So I'd love to see it. Let's see if you're right, speaking the truth. So hopefully that'll happen. And then also you're saying that there's a lot of people that are now interested in doing the show after seeing it on air on Paramount Plus this season. And I do think that there is a lot of old school players now that have said that they'd be interested. I think one of the biggest ones probably that would be interested in coming into this in the future would be like a Johnny Bananas. But Mark said he didn't want to have Johnny Bananas, CT, Wes, any of the current players that are old schoolers on this season, because he really wanted to have a throwback to those that we haven't seen for quite a long time. But it is great to see that there are more old school players. And I think there's so many good old school players still out there that could play, and we'd love to see them come on the show.
It's the fact that it's short. It's like, okay, gotta love the 5-month season of the regular challenge, all-star, or not all-stars, double agents. 5 months is a big commitment, plus the 2 weeks quarantine, and then 2 weeks quarantine after at home when you get back. Like, it's a bit of a commitment. It's a half-year commitment that you're going to have to take away from your job, your family, and anything else. And so the fact that, like, they probably did this, in less than a month? Like, maybe 5 weeks with the quarantine? Like, that is doable with the chance of winning $500,000, getting some relevancy, getting those Instagram that didn't even exist back in the day when you were originally competing on this thing. So there's a lot of benefits from it being a lot shorter that I think is appealing for these old school players. And so I can see all of them wanting to come back, because it's when you get an opportunity to be 1 out of 20 to win $500,000 for 5 weeks out of your life. Like, it's good odds, and I'd probably take that risk too. So definitely.
Yeah, 100%. And there's certain players that, like, for instance, I am putting money out there. Like, I could be wrong on this. He won't be on the next one, but he will be in the future. I'm putting money on it. Leroy will come back. Leroy will do an all-star season. And I think that Leroy has got a really good chance at winning an all-star season as well, because, again, he's not that old. I think that if you're a player that's in your mid-30s to later 30s, you actually have a pretty good chance in this season if you're still in physically pretty decent shape. The only thing that with Leroy that would be interesting is that if he had to do a puzzle and do it as an individual towards the end, that might be difficult. But who says the next All-Star season, Chantel, could be a teams one? They could change it up completely, because that would be very old school-like.
Whatever. Like, that's what I love about it. It's like, it's the format that they're going back to is just kind of what I liked about it. It's like, you suck, you're going in, like, that's just like perfect. Like, there's no nothing other than just do better and you won't go in. So I like that. I like that it just makes people work harder and want to do better at the dailies. And then the fact that you have to vote somebody in to go against them, it's perfect. It's very easy. It's simple. It gives you strategy usually, but people throw themselves in doesn't. But, we still got this episode. But I like the simplicity of what they're doing, but they had other simple kind of versions that I think that they'll go back to. So even if they did, like, the battle of the exes, like, if they brought that back with some of these exes that are like old school rivals from 15 years ago, like, that would be epic. Like, bring me Coral and Miz. Like, give me this. Yes, I want to see them go back to some of these older formats and bring some of these beefs back on my screen.
I will be shocked if they actually got the Miz to come back and do one of these seasons, because I feel like he's just gotten bigger than the challenge in recent times. But who knows? Maybe he does want to go back at some point to play with some of his old school friends on the show. Now, the other thing that I wanted to point...
Very tempting. $500,000 is very tempting.
Yeah, 100%. But I don't know how much he gets paid for doing what he's doing currently. He's pretty well known. He's probably one of the more well-known challengers out there. If you also look at the rest of this, I want to bring it back to the elimination part, and with everybody being forced here to vote. I found Darrell's strategy really on point. It shows why Darrell is probably the most experienced campaigner in this specific, season, and he has to go first. He's like, TJ, why you got to do me like this? And he immediately says, guys, does anybody want to volunteer for this spot? And there's crickets. You can't hear a single person saying anything, but he's smart enough to go to Beth and say, Beth, who do you want to go up against you? Which is great, because it makes it now sound like it's not his choice that he's voting against Arisa. Beth wanted you to go up against her. So Beth's the one that you should be angry at. I thought it was just on point.
It was super perfect. And there's been other challenge seasons where you had to call your opponent down. And so that became part of the strategy as well. It's being like, okay, well, if I have that person down there, they are going to probably call me into elimination. So we can't have them go. Like, so that also becomes part of the strategy too. And so I'm hoping that now that they know what happens with the lifesaver, I think that it's going to be used probably every episode now. Because it's like being like, no, use it on me, and then this is what happened, and they're going to start reworking the strategy if they don't like the person that gets voted into elimination.
So
you can read it.
Exciting. Exciting. So apparently the Miz wants to come back to All Stars, but he had some conflicts with major wrestling events. So exciting to see that, because I think that the Miz is another person that could just absolutely kill it. Can you imagine like having the Miz back with like Darrell, with Mark, potentially with like a CT, a Wes, like a Johnny Bananas in one season? Like, I mean, it would be absolutely crazy.
I want that. Like, it's just so epic. It's so nostalgic. It just makes me so happy. I love it. Please, The Miz, quit wrestling and just come back on the challenge.
Oh, let's hope they can make it work in the next season. I'm very convinced that the way things are going, we're going to see another season or 2 or 3 or 4 of this coming out, because they can keep feeding from the, like, I'm not saying that they will, but they can keep feeding in the future from the current season. As people retire, they can start bringing some of those people in after we've seen some other old school players. So it's really just a great concept to have the All-Stars, the OGs versus the newer current season. They are kind of moving in separate directions with what they want to do on these shows as well. So I feel like it gives the best of two worlds for old school fans who have been getting annoyed with the newer format of the show. We know Johnny Bananas is not a fan of how things are going on the new show. It's probably getting harder for him to win now as well, because more and more people are playing more strategic against them. But I do feel like he would fit in pretty well in this concept. Now, I did want to touch here as well that at the actual elimination, we do now see and that Arisa goes down. She ends up quitting the show, and TJ says that he hopes to see her never. And this is one of the things I love about TJ. Like, TJ is becoming, like, for those who don't know, I'm a massive Survivor fan. Obviously, I've got the Outwit, Outlast, Outplay t-shirt on. I'm a massive Jeff Probst fan, but TJ, you've got to love the fact that he's just that much more raw than Jeff Probst. Like, Jeff Probst sometimes has to stay neutral, but TJ says it as how it is. You know, if he's that annoyed by someone, he will tell you, I hope I never see you again.
Absolutely. And TJ is a part of the OG challenge. Like, we've been watching TJ grow up at the same time. And you can see little bits of TJ also in the current season when they were in the cave, and how Nany was like, you're horrible. Like, you're evil. Like, why are you laughing like that? Like, they still have banter and like a relationship for the last 10 years. Like, he's seen her do a lot of different things. He's hugged her said, see you next time. And so seeing him back in his element, I still wonder whether or not TJ has like a producer credit in there or whatnot, because he does seem just like he's enjoying being with these people again, and you know, just pulling these little pranks on them and like saying his little quibs and lines. Like, we were always worried in the past about like, oh man, I don't know if TJ's gonna like that. Do you think TJ's gonna give him attitude about that? Like, disappointing TJ was a thing in the challenge. And so I'm loving seeing him bringing this back. And like, you know, TJ remarks, can't make TJ upset. That's not right.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna add to this, and I'm sorry to again jump to the current season. The one thing I will tell you about TJ, the way that he handled the Fessy thing for me was with kitty gloves, and I found that quite strange. You know, like him going to Fessy and saying, "Hey, don't you want to continue to play? Come on, like just try it." You know, he was like, the old school TJ would have just gone there and said to him, Fessy, you're being a baby, you know, but he was dealing with Fessy at very kitty gloves. And I wonder why that is. I wonder if it is because they realized that Fessy is so universally hated by all of the challenge fans that they want him back on the next season, because that generates hype. It generates people like feeling some sort of an emotion towards someone is better than not feeling anything. And I'm wondering if they were like scared of dealing with him in a way that it was a bit more critical, because that might have prevented him from wanting to do the next season. I just found it really strange, that specific one, while we're on the subject of TJ.
I agreed with you, because I was also surprised by how the TJ was handling that situation, and the people that I was talking to about it were suggesting that TJ was kind of being more calculated about it, kind of being like, I'm going to do this really nicely because I'm that disappointed. Like if TJ's coming at you nicely, that's even more embarrassing. And so that's what they're kind of thinking, that it was more strategic of CJ to be like, well, you got to do this. Like, come on, man. Like, you could still catch up. You could still make it, in order for Fessy to feel even worse about not doing it. So I agree with you. I'm not sure if I buy that version, but I can see it being a possibility.
Now, we've got Speaking the Truth saying that Mark has said that he wants to do at least 9 of these seasons. He does want to do a crossover with New Schoolers for one season. And I know Chantal is not a fan of the crossover New Schooler versus Old Schooler concept, but I am, as a New School fan, I'm really happy to see that. And I think that there's quite a few of these players that, in my opinion, I'm surprised they're not on the current season. Like, I would much rather see Nehemiah come back into the actual rotation. I would much rather see Derek coming back and playing some current seasons. There's certain players, like Darrell is obviously still a part of that, but it's certain players that are kind of being reused from double agents going into the next season that I'm not really fully behind why they're coming back. So me personally, I'm a fan of it. I don't think, Chantal, you can tell me if I'm wrong, you're not a big fan of the crossover.
Well, the reason why I don't care for the giving a platform to the new people, because I just don't enjoy seeing a lot of them. Like, I feel like they ruined the show that I love. And so it's like, okay, good. They brought it back to what I really like with the people that I like. Let's just not, like, maybe one, but it has to just be a one-off. I don't want that to be start the new thing. It could just be me wanting to keep things the same. It's kind of like, I like the road rules over real world. So I did like when they did the crossover, and like, that's where the challenge was incepted. And so if this is maybe the new inception that's becoming of the challenge, it's like old school versus new school, I can maybe get behind it if I'm looking to change and grow with it. But I'm not a big fan of the new season in general, just like the format and the way that they're bringing in new players. I'm just like not really down with it. But I can more so get behind them doing a crossover season like that than just like not having the OG season at all.
And this is why I love doing the podcast with Chantal, because I'm the opposite of Chantal. I love the new seasons. I came in as a new person. Like, there's certain things I don't like about the new season. Don't give me that face, Chantal. But there's definitely, as a whole, I like the fact that we're doing a lot of more athletic challenges. I like the fact that we've got players from other seasons coming in. I know there's a lot of Challenge OG fans that don't like the Big Brother players coming into the show and all that. And I do feel like it's due to the type of Big Brother players. Probably Fessy is the biggest one. People thought Joss was bad when he came on, and then they brought Fessy in, and now people are like, we'd much rather have Joss on the screen than have Fessy there. But I do feel like it's good. Like, it's brought new fans to the show. Like myself, I came there because of people from Big Brother crossing over, people from Survivor crossing over, and I've gone back to watch quite a lot. I haven't seen all the old school seasons, but I've watched up to Fresh Meats 2. I've given a pretty decent Fresh Meats 2 to the current season. I've given a good chunk of the challenge a go because of it, and they've gained some extra viewers from it. So I am a fan of the current idea of bringing players into this, because they don't have these shows that they had back in the day to sort of feed from on the challenge. And I know, Chantal, you're a big fan of the party and just them hanging out. I like that side of it as well, but I do like the balance between the competitions. I do think this, and we'll talk about this in a completely different podcast, there's some challenges that are getting dangerous. We've spoken about this before. The way that they've got professional athletes out there at the moment competing against everyday people can become pretty dangerous. But as a whole, I do like the idea of a crossover season. Now, I did want to go into...
Though, like, I don't care to watch American Ninja Warrior. You know what I mean? It's not a show that I particularly care about. And so I like, it's just becoming a different thing that I wouldn't have started watching as a new viewer. And if all the old players, like the vets, if they stop being on the show, I don't know how I'll feel about maybe wanting to continue to watch moving forward, because I don't necessarily like the energy and the vibe of the players that are being groomed to be the vets of today. So we definitely like it for different reasons. Obviously, I don't want people to quit. I love people. I love amazing matchups. I love people putting in all their heart and doing really well. But when I was watching this episode of the All-Stars, I was like, oh my God, I wish that I was there with them. I want to be competing with these people. Like, I felt like I wanted to be included in that show and with these people. And on the current challenge, it's kind of like, it just doesn't seem as much fun. And I want it to be fun and less of like grueling sports thing for athletes. It's just like, that's not fun for me. Everyday people doing extraordinary things is just a little bit more interesting.
No, I hear you. Now, going into our draft picks, I end up losing another person here yet again that goes into the elimination pool. So you're taking a two-person lead on me here, Chantal. Definitely your old school knowledge is coming into play.
I mean, we're going to lose some eventually. I think the people that are gone, I kind of expected them to be gone pretty soon. So, and I don't think that you felt any of these people were going to do, or maybe Trishelle you thought was going to do a little bit better, maybe. But, you know, for the most part, I if they ended up on my team because I was last pick there, like I could see it happening. So I don't judge your team solely on the fact that you've lost so many people.
Yeah, looking at my current team, if I had to make a prediction, like the next two people on that team that's probably in line to be eliminated in the near future, based off what I've seen so far, would be, and I pain to say this because I really love the girl, is probably Janae. I think she's too nice for this game, to be honest. And probably if she comes back for another All-Star season and gets a little bit more time to train after the pregnancy she's had, she'll probably come in physically in even better shape. But she has shown a lot of heart in this episode, and that's something that I really appreciate. And then also Big Easy, I think, is another person here. These two people probably are next in line in my team. If I look at your team, I do think you've got a pretty solid team all across, and I'm starting to feel better and better about the people that you've got in your team, to be honest. Who do you think in your team would probably be the most at-risk players at this stage?
Maybe Beth, because when you see people down there already, it just makes it a little bit easier to see them down there again until they didn't get to see her compete and win. And so she didn't get to have that, like, okay, I'm coming back, leave me alone, don't touch me, I'll mess you up. And so I think that people might still think that she's a little bit of a layup. So I wouldn't be surprised if she went down. Same with Ruthie. I could see them thinking that she might be small, so they might throw her in. And same with Katie. They might think that she's small and might throw her in. So those are the three people that I would say out of the women that are most likely to be going in potentially next. And I'd say yes, maybe out of the men here, because he had one confessional last week. It might have been his first confessional in the whole series so far. And he was just talking about, like, you know, that people are playing 3D chess and, like, you know, people are strategizing. You got to really pay attention to what's going on. So I feel like if he's looking and recognizing that, he's not part of it. And so he seems like he might be on the outside and not really have people protecting him, really. So if he doesn't really have any friends, he might be easy to let go. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he went next.
No, I agree with you. And just out of interest's sake, I had a look at USA Today again, because we've been looking at that for the first couple of weeks. Not that I'm saying USA Today knows the scoop on what's going on, but for the third week in a row, or the fourth week in a row, Nehemiah is their number one choice. They really love Nehemiah. They think that even though he lost as the captain this episode, they do think that he's going to go deep. And I think a lot of that's got to do with who's number two, which is Jimmy. They see Jimmy and Nehemiah as being the two people who are seen to be the most strategic going into the season. You've got the physical person there with the one that's the brains. And then in third, they've got Elton. So those are the top three currently on USA Today, which I do think, looking at the season so far, those are all pretty good picks. Like Elton, actually, again, this episode impressed me a lot by carrying his team in the challenge. And again, you can just tell he is still in physically really good shape. One thing I don't know about Elton, Chantal, and you can fill me in on that one, is how does he do when it comes to puzzles and like the mental side of things? Because physically, he looks pretty solid. Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Okay, so that's okay. Speaking the Truth says that he agrees with both of us, and that's what we like to hear, speaking the truth. He likes the old school vibe and the sportsmanship, but he also likes the competition. Speaking the truth, you sound like you would do well in this game. You would be a political mastermind like Darrell, handing off all the responsibility to Beth to make the choice because you didn't choose a side, but we love it. And to be honest with you, I understand there's a case to be made for both of it. And for me, I think that the show as a whole, the concept of the challenge is what I love. Like I love the challenge first, and then whatever comes into that is second for me. And I do think there's some great new players, and I think that season 37, which we haven't spoken too much about, there's some potentially really cool new players that's going to be a part of this show that I think is going to add some value into it. Like being a Survivor fan, there's a couple of better Survivor players than what we've seen. No offense to Jay, I think Jay's a pretty good player as well, but there's some great Survivor players coming onto the show that I think could add a little bit of an additional dynamic to the show.
Some of them have been dropped though. So the only people that are left that I've heard about is Michelle Fitzgerald and what's the Tommy are the only two people that I think are still in that list. The other Michelle Schubert I've heard is not on anymore. Natalie Anderson's not on anymore. Jay's
Wendell though?
Wendell's been released as well.
That to me is shocking. Like releasing Wendell is a mistake because like I know Tommy Sheehan, I've heard he's a fan of the challenge, so he probably will get a lot of the behind the scenes. But I just don't see Tommy Sheehan, and I will eat my words if I'm wrong. Record it, clip it, tell me Chris, you were so wrong about this. I just don't see him being better TV than Wendell. I think Wendell going in there would be the better TV option, and I think the relationship between Michelle and Wendell would add that extra little bit of spice onto the show. Like we know some people who know some people in the Survivor world, and I can tell you that there is still a bit of hurt feelings there, and that would have been really, really good going into the season. It would have been very juicy. So I'm hoping you're wrong, Chantel, because I know that Wendell has been posting a lot of stuff on Instagram, but there's also rumors out there that potentially he's like posting a lot of this because it was just someone else who's handling his account. So let's see what happens when the show actually starts. A last tidbit here before we finish. Did you hear the news about Wes pranking Joss this season, going into season 37? Did you hear any of that bits?
Was it was it the news thing? The news feed? No. Okay, no, tell me.
So Wes, he actually made a call to Joss prior to season 37 in a dark room and pretended like he was going to be on the season to create an alliance with him. And Joss ended up, and it was the only person that Wes spoke to. He told no one else this information. So Joss went and leaked it because people thought Wes was going to be on the season when he was never going to be on the season. So he actually, before season 37 even started, he said, I can't do 37. I've got other commitments. That's the reason I can't do it. I'll probably look at next year if I can come back. But Joss went and leaked it, so production found out about it and took his phone away from him because they reckon that Joss has been leaking cast's information for quite a few seasons now.
I actually, now that you finished with the story, I did hear that, and I think that it's like amazing because it's kind of, and I think he was released. Was he released as well? I can't remember, but I love that at least producers now know that he's just so fame thirsty. It's like, it's so annoying. Like, yeah. Why do you want him on your show? He's annoying.
So I love Wes. I'm a big Wes fan. I love all the extra things that Wes does around the game and just the way that he plays it. I think it's really funny and entertaining. Chantel, it's been great talking to you about the Challenge All-Stars episode 4. We will be back next week to do this again, to talk about episode 5. We're getting to the pointy end or the middle section of the season now. So like we said, probably some sort of a purge coming up at some point to get some of these players down because we still have 18 in the game. And it's going to be a bit of a gamble if they do like a purge and it's like team-based or something. Like we might lose players that we didn't expect to lose at that point, you know, like it could be up in the air in regards to who's actually going to make it here until the end of the season. Now, Chantel, you're going to be back to do some more Big Brother coverage. Can you get the viewers a bit of an idea of when you will be back on the show to do the Big Brother block coverage?
Absolutely. After the episode. So Monday on the block will probably be joined by Khalid, most likely, or I'll be on the block by myself, one of the two, where we talk about what the heck happened, because it actually was pretty much the craziest week in Big Brother Canada history for sure. And the most the episode was fantastic. And so we're going to see the fallout and all that on Monday. So at 10:15 on Mondays, we'll be doing, we'll see who the nominations are, see who came back. Like there's a lot going on. So Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, right after the episode, we go live on the block.
And I will be back to continue to cover Survivor Global for those who do want to watch the global seasons as well. Currently, we're covering Survivor South Africa, Island of Secrets, and we will have some players coming up as well. The eliminated players for both of those episodes will be on the show this Sunday and also this coming Wednesday on the show. So really looking forward to that. Now, guys, if you love the content on Reality Pop, please subscribe. If you subscribe to the show, it just gives us more credibility when we go out there to try and get some of these guests to come onto the show. So we really appreciate your support. We have gotten close to 600 subscribers now, and I'm actually pushing for Adam to do a special event. As soon as we hit 1,000 subscribers, we will be doing something special. Hopefully we can announce that within the next week or so in regards to what that would look like. But we want to put a target out there to get to that 1,000 subscribers. Guys, thank you for your support and see you next week. Goodbye.
Ciao.